Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1142B, and today's date is December 2nd, 2016, and the title of the episode is Foreign Intelligence Agencies Prepare to Cyber Attack Russia's Financial Institutions. Now, before we get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, which is Saturday in the morning, I'll be uploading an interview with Brandon Smith. He is from altmarket.com. And he had made predictions prior to the Brexit, prior to Trump getting elected, and he was right on both of those predictions. Well, now he's made additional predictions, and you can hear all of these predictions Saturday morning. If you are on the X22 Report email alert system, I'll send you an email. If you're subscribed to the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel, you should get an email from YouTube. If not, just go right to the channel in the morning. I should have this up by 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or you can come over to the X22Report.com site, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the video on the right-hand side. Or you can go to newssentinel.com, same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to the right-hand side, you'll be able to play the video there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, Jill Stein is still pushing the recount in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and we know why they're doing this, but the recount has already started in Wisconsin, and so far we can see the gap between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump narrowed by one vote. Out in Michigan, Trump is filing an objection to Jill Stein's recount petition. He's setting up lawsuits, but it looks like the Michigan Secretary of State says, you know what, we're going to allow the recount to go on. And at this point, Jill Stein, her whole argument of having a recount, well, she just kind of blew it. On CNN, she really said there's absolutely no evidence on vote tampering. Actually, in many of the cases, she has no evidence whatsoever. Even the cyber attacks, there's no evidence there. There's nothing. But they're allowing the recount. And we'll have to see what happens as we get closer and closer to December 19th. Now, the House just passed the $611 billion bill, and they rejected many parts of the Obama proposal. And we can see right now, the bill right now gave our military a lot more money. Obama recommended small pay increases, and they gave our military the much-needed increase in salary. The bill also prevented the Pentagon from forcing thousands of California National Guard troops to repay enlisted bonuses and benefits they received a decade after they signed up to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan. Soldiers would have to return a bonus only if a preponderance of the evidence shows they knew they weren't eligible to receive the money. Now, something very interesting in all of this is that Congress voted to arm the Syrian rebels with MANPADS. Now, the language in the annual defense bill creates certain restrictions on the provisions of the weapons. And we can see right now John McCain was pushing this, and this would allow the terrorists in Syria to shoot down Syrian jets or Russian jets. We know they're not going to shoot down American jets because this is part of the United States government central bank's neocon elites paid mercenary army. So they're not going to fire at the people who are covertly paying them, supplying them with weapons, and supporting them. Now, under Obama's immigration policy, 2 years ago, he wrote an executive order, some people say it's a memorandum, to allow minors to come into the country across the U.S.-Mexico border. And 2 years later, what we come to find out is that 70% of the people admitted under the program are actually adults. And this is coming from the official data from the State Department that indicates that of the 1,600 aliens that have traveled to the U.S. under the CAM program, only 480 of them are actually under the age of 18. The rest are adults. So we can see something was going on there. Now, something else very interesting that has to do with individuals coming into the United States, refugees, immigrants, nearly 2,500 refugees from terrorism hotspots around the world, well, they're headed to the U.S. because they were rejected by Australia. And top lawmakers can't get answers about who they actually are. The U.S. State Department has classified the details on the refugees. These refugees will be resettled in America via a secret deal made with Australia. Now, I don't understand why this has to be classified. Are these individuals the paid mercenaries that were used in Syria? Is that who these individuals are? But right now, it is not transparent whatsoever. Now, we know that in the NDAA, they took out the provision to have women drafted into the armed forces. And the White House and the Pentagon, well, they said they would like this to still happen. They want the draft. Now, what's very interesting about this, there's two things happening here. If women want to join up to the armed forces, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, they volunteer, they join up, and they go into the armed forces. Why are they pushing a draft? Because the only time you use a draft is if you're at war. And actually, the draft is unconstitutional, but they created it, and you only use this when the country is at war. So why are Obama, the Pentagon, pushing this so hard? Are they preparing for a war and they want to make sure that this is implemented? It kind of sounds like that. Now, out in the EU, we see that the EU censors, well, they're cracking down on dissent. And anyone who protests against Brussels, it's a crime now. So what they're doing is they're criminalizing political dissent against the EU project. Now, human rights groups have reacted with horror after the EU member states approved draconian new anti-terror laws, which critics have warned could be used to suppress Eurosceptic movements by force. Amnesty International, the European Network Against Racism, European Digital Rights, the Fundamental Rights European Experts, Human Rights Watch, the International Commission of Jurists, and the Open Society Foundations have all called for the legislation to be comprehensively amended or else scrapped altogether. The legislation is so vague, it defines political dissent as terrorism. The legislation also advocates shutting down websites for any reason. They don't have to give one. Well, it looks like it has begun. Censorship of websites, those people who object to the establishment. We can see that this has been building. We've been watching this. We've been tracking this. We've been looking at the situation where those people who don't agree with the central bank, the elite, the establishment, those people are terrorists. It even says it here in the United States in the NDAA. And we can see right now that countries are very worried about what is about to happen, because what we're seeing in France right now, well, they just added something to their warning alert system. They added another level. Now, coming up on this Christmas and New Year's holiday, France decided they're going to upgrade its national security alert system. And they were going to introduce a new high-level warning. Now, this alert system, this was introduced in 1978, and it had two levels: vigilance and reinforced security risk of attack. Right now, they're at the second level, reinforced security risk of attack. The new system will now feature a third level called attack emergency. Now, this is going to be used for imminent assaults, maybe some type of economic crisis, riots, and the new level will involve exceptional measures such as closing roads, metro lines, schools, shutting down maybe the internet, blocking websites. And there are some additional measures that are completely confidential. So what we've been tracking and watching over this time period is countries have been preparing for those individuals that don't agree with the government, with the central banks. They're preparing for people to riot. Remember, they're nervous about their authority. They're nervous about their positions. They don't want to give it up. So what they do is they create laws to censor, to block, to shut out, to come down hard on the people, to make sure they can keep control. And we can see with this new attack emergency, they're doing just that. Now, at this point, we realize that the Houthis, they set up their new government. Of course, the UN, the United States, they don't like this whatsoever. But the Chinese, they invited the Houthi spokesman to China to talk about different things. And the talks will discuss ways to solve the Yemeni conflict with the support of China, as well as lay the foundation for bilateral relations. The Chinese authorities right now are saying, listen, there doesn't have to be war. We can do this through political dialogue. We can help economically. And China and Russia have been doing this quite a bit around the world, while the United States comes in with force, kills many women, children, either through our own armed forces or using paid mercenaries, proxy armies, to do their dirty work. We can see right now China and Russia are taking the opposite side of saying, you know something, we don't need to fight. Let's do this economically, because what we have here is the United States, where their economic system, and I say their because it's the central banks, the elites, it's their system. It's not the people's system. It's coming to an end. Where Russia and China, the BRICS nations, their system is just developing. So they don't have all this debt. They don't have all this type of corruption. Yes, they still have corruption. But we can see right now we're on opposite sides. And we see they're taking different approaches. Actually, this happened in Rome during their fall. We see Lavrov is out there, and this is the Russian foreign minister. He affirmed that all the armed groups in Aleppo are controlled by al-Nusra, which is a terrorist group. And he's saying that all these organizations that are fighting there, they're all terrorists. There are no moderate rebels. There's really nothing there except terrorists. And what's very interesting is an obscure Syrian opposition group of unclear origin called Israel to help them overthrow the Syrian government. Now, the Syrian opposition group calls themselves Halas Watini, and they issued a statement to Tel Aviv offering to join forces to overthrow Assad. Well, we know in the last day or so, Israel decided to fire a missile from Lebanon and hit groups in Damascus. So we'll have to see where this goes and what is really going to happen, because it looks at this point that it doesn't really matter, because the terrorist groups inside of Aleppo, they're done with at this point. It looks like Russia and Syria, they pretty much have the situation under control. And the United States, they're never going to be getting into Iran through Syria. They're actually never even going to get Syria at this point, unless they use some other method, like a tactical nuke, a dirty bomb, or something like that, to create an event to say, okay, all bets are off, we're going to war, we're done here. Now, we know prior to the elections, they were making a really big deal that Russia cyber attacked the DNC, Russia cyber attacked the election system. Of course, they never showed any proof. And of course, as we know, you just can't show proof the next day. Actually, you can't even report that they did it the next day because it's very difficult to track these things down. But of course, the U.S. government central bankers, they have the law behind them to use propaganda on the American people. Now, the Constitution, on the other hand, says nothing about using propaganda on the people. But again, the powers that be, they don't follow the Constitution at all. Now, what's very interesting about all this, Obama did say that at a certain time, a certain place, they will cyber attack Russia. They already have the information needed. Everything was set up to do so. And the Russian Federation Security Service, FSB, well, they informed the Russian government that foreign intelligence agencies, well, they're preparing to launch cyber attacks aimed at destabilizing Russian financial systems. When will this start? They're saying this is going to start early next week. And they're saying that the attacks will target activities of Russia's largest banks. And they actually gave a date when this will start, December 5th. It will be accompanied by massive spam text messages and inflammatory social network and blog posts, all related to an alleged crisis in the credit and financial system and the bankruptcy of the major federal and regional banks. What are they doing? They're trying to wage a cyber war on the economy. They're going to use propaganda to convince everyone that their system's falling apart. They're going to hit the central bank. They're going to hit the banks. They're going to hit financial institutions to try to bring down the economy. The real objective here is to have Russia do something. They also said that Russian cities will also be targeted during the cyber assault, which means they might go after the power infrastructure. Now, is this going to happen? Well, the information that the Russian Federal Security Services has says it's going to. So we will find out come next week what actually happened. Now, if it does happen, it looks like the cyber wars have begun. And it looks like that we're going to be running into a major problem, because if this is true, Russia will then retaliate. Maybe they'll try to go down the political path, but we know for a fact that the powers that are in the government right now, the shadow government, the elite, the neocons, they don't want to have political discussion. They want war. Now, we see that the establishment, the elite, the central bankers, the shadow government, it looks like they are directing the new administration to exactly what they want them to do. So far, we have nuclear material that is missing from Iran. We hear that allegedly Iran cyber attacks Saudi Arabia. We now have Obama sanctioning Iran. And Trump, his transition team, said, well, yeah, it looks like they are considering new sanctions against Iran. Now, it looks like they took this and they said, you know something? Let's build this up. We know that Trump doesn't like Iran. He thinks the deal is really bad. Let's play on this. Let's push him into a situation. And it looks like this is exactly what they're trying to do. So what do we have happening right now? We have many things occurring all at the same time. We have the referendum that's coming up very soon. We have this cyber attack that is happening at the same time that the referendum is going to be going on in Italy. We have the Iran situation, and we can see that all of this can blow up all at the same time, because we know that the economy is done with. We know they don't want a black swan event. We know they're going to bring it down the way they want. We know they want war. And we can see they're moving in this direction, and everything is building at this point. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.